All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for August 26, 2015. First item on the agenda is a consideration of minutes from our regular meeting on July 29, 2015. Those minutes are included with our agenda materials. Any changes to those minutes? All right, if not, they stand approved as presented, and we'll consider some new business. First, a variance request. It is application Z15056 by Mr. Bland Trollinger he's requesting a 7-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, which requires a minimum 25-foot rear yard setback. And this is for a residential this is in a residential single-family district for property located at 3030 Twisted Oak Drive. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you review that one for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. The applicant wishes to construct a covered porch attached to the rear of the house located at 3030 Twisted Oak Drive in Section 2 of the Pring Subdivision. The property is zoned RS12, which requires a minimum 25-foot rear yard setback. If the covered porch is built to the applicant's desired dimensions of 30 feet wide by 20 feet deep on the northern portion of the property, it will encroach into the rear yard setback by 7 feet. In your packets, you'll find 2 photos which show stakes marking the edge of the proposed covered porch. The porch would have considerably more width and depth than the existing patio, which you can see in the aerial photograph. And the photos along with that aerial also show an existing tree line between the applicant's house and the neighboring house to the north. Neither property is fenced. Though the covered porch would encroach into the setback by 7 feet, the tree line, as long as it is preserved, could help soften the encroachment for the neighbors to the north. As noted in the staff report, the justification provided by the applicant hinges primarily on lot conditions caused by the shape of the cul-de-sac itself. As shown on the recorded plat, the applicant's lot, Lot 62, is the smallest lot in Section 2 of the Pring Subdivision. Additionally, the applicant's house is situated slightly toward the rear of the lot, giving the applicant less space between the rear facade and the rear property line than many of the other houses in this neighborhood. Due to these characteristics, it would appear that the applicant's options are to either reduce the size of the proposed porch or to obtain a variance here today. Again, the applicant's request today is for a 7-foot variance to the required 25-foot rear yard setback, and this would leave an 18-foot rear yard between the covered porch and the rear property line. One other item that I've placed on the tables in front of you, the applicant submitted a petition signed by 3 neighbors giving consent to their variance request today. Staff can take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? All right, Mr. Trollinger, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Chairman and board, no, not at this time. If there are any questions, I'd be willing to answer any at this time or comments.
Just curious, on the petition there that we have is signed by owners of lots 65, 61, and 63.
Yes.
Where are they in relation to you?
The 65 is directly behind me, which is the one that would be most impacted. He's here. That one of those neighbors. Excuse me. Well, let me look at the photo. Yes, 65 is directly behind me, which would be the most impacted in my observation. And then 61 and 63, Chairman, are to the left and right of me. 65 is the one that has that buffer, the screening, and actually 63 does also.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Trollinger? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussions or motion.
There's no discussion. I'll make a motion that we approve the 7-foot variance.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. All right, next we'll consider combination variance and special use permit request. This application Z15057 by Mr. Enoch Gerald of Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing Linebaugh Public Library System. He's making the following request for property in a residential single-family RS-15 zone located at 307 South Baird Lane. First of all, a special use permit to allow a public building in the RS-15 district. And secondly, a variance from the zoning ordinance which prohibits the parking area for a public building from being located in the required front yard. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant wishes to construct a 5,572 square foot community technology center on the Hobgood Elementary School property at 307 South Baird Lane. The property is currently zoned RS-15. This 21-acre lot is bounded by public streets on all four sides: South Baird on the west, Jupiter Place on the north, Minerva Drive on the east, and Mercury Boulevard on the south. The proposed structure would be situated on the northeastern portion of the lot, near the intersection of Jupiter and Minerva. In order to construct the technology center as it is depicted on the site plan, the applicant would need to obtain both a special use permit and a variance from the board. The special use permit would allow this particular use in the RS-15 zoning district, while the variance would allow a small portion of the proposed parking area to encroach within the required 40-foot minimum setback. Let me first address the special use permit. 2 special use permits have been granted for this property over the last 3 years. In June 2012, the board granted a special use permit to allow for a 12,778 square foot addition to the school. Earlier this year, the board granted another special use permit to allow for a 33,000 square foot addition. Today's request is for a 5,500 square foot technology center, which would be operated by the Linebaugh Public Library System. The applicant does attest that all of the criteria outlined in Section 9C of the zoning ordinance will be met. The facility will be open to the public from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays, and capacity is approximately 30 people. Thus, we would anticipate the traffic impacts would be minimal. With regard to the variance request, the site plan submitted by the applicant shows a portion of the parking area jutting slightly into the 40-foot front yard setback along Minerva Drive. Based on staff's quick measurements, this appears to be less than 500 square foot encroachment that extends approximately 15 feet into the setback at its broadest point. The applicant notes that the shape of the property lines at the Jupiter Place and Minerva Drive intersection necessitate this encroachment. In June 2012, as part of the expansion project mentioned earlier, the board granted a 27-foot front yard setback variance for this property to accommodate 9 parking spaces. We do want to note that the site plan submitted to the board earlier this year as part of a special use permit request showed a new access drive on Jupiter Place. As part of today's request, the applicant has submitted a site plan that shows an access drive on Minerva and eliminates the drive on Jupiter Place shown to you earlier this year. Mr. Lewis, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Mr. Lewis and I did meet with the transportation director earlier this week, and that seemed to be perfectly fine with him. The proposed access drive on Minerva would serve both the technology center and the school expansion approved earlier this year. Staff can answer any questions about today's request that you may have, and please note that separate motions would be needed for the special use permit and the variance. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? What is a community technology center?
We'll get someone representing the applicant to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board. I'm Enoch Gerald with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Also with me today is Mr. Lyle Lynch, the architect for the project, Ms. Rita Shacklet, who's the director of the library. And she may be able to help me as I go through this, Ms. Shacklet, but they have computers today in the library, and they're looking to expand, or they don't have room in the current library. So this technology center will be used by the public with computers so they can access the internet. It'll be used for some school children from Hobgood. It's available to MTSU students, the public as well, too. They also are going to have a few meeting rooms in there that if you got a library card, you could go into, reserve a meeting room for use as well. So this center is really just to help sort of expand the library services. They just don't have enough room to do that in the current location. And it seems to be a good location as far as close to Hobgood School and to the MTSU in the downtown area. So that's really in a gist. If I missed anything, Rita, let me know. But we also have Mr. Gary Green, who is the chairman of the Center for the Community Technology. Gary, you want to add to that as well? He's also on the library board. He's the chair of that committee.
Mr. Chairman and Commission, my name is Gary Green. I'm Vice Chair of the Library Board of Directors and also am serving as Chairman of the Community Technology Center Board. The library about 2.5 years ago started a very interest in increased technology drive for our library. We were falling behind. And during this time, it came to our attention that the U.S. Commerce Department, through the Census Bureau, had done a technology survey throughout the United States of populations of larger than 65,000 people, which, of course, we fit right in. It came to our attention that those that have a high school education, of those, about 39% of those folks do not have ready access to high-speed internet in their homes. And as you get to those folks that do not have a high school education, that amount becomes a phenomenal 57% in a void of having high-speed internet. So this was fitting into our technology initiative that we were looking for, and particularly in the Mercury Boulevard corridor. So that's where our focus had been. So we worked with the Murfreesboro City School Board and through them determined that this property on the backside of the Hobgood School property was an ideal spot for this. It fit right into our project, basically due to transportation. Children can use their bicycles and come to this. Rover will have a stop at this location. And it was the ideal situation for this project. There will be meeting rooms like you just heard in this building. It can be used during the day by small business people. It can be used as a small business incubator if you're a small business person and want to meet with vendors or customers. Instead of going to the local coffee shop and leaning over a laptop, you can come into this center and plug in your laptop and you'll have the audio-visual available to you at that time. You can check that room out by simply going online at your home using your library card. You have to be a citizen of Murfreesboro or Rutherford County and have a library card to use this facility. And you can reserve that room for whatever time is available for 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever you need. Also, high school, middle school children can come in after school that have to meet for group projects. There'll be rooms available for them that they can come in and meet and have the high-speed internet available to them at that time. We feel like this is a very positive move for the city of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Green. Any questions for Mr. Green?
Sounds like a great project.
Thank you. We think so, too. We think it's going to put Murfreesboro on the map. To our knowledge, there's only one other freestanding facility like this in the United States, and that's in San Antonio, Texas. And we're modeling this after theirs.
When do you all think you're going to break ground?
Well, this is contingent on funding. We're still working on funding.
Okay, gotcha. And it'll be part of the Limbaugh Public Library system.
It will be. I believe the building itself will be owned by the city of Murfreesboro, and they will be leasing it to the Limbaugh Public Library system, which is a quasi-governmental entity because we have board members that are appointed by the city council and board members that are appointed by the Rutherford County Commission, and we actually report to the Secretary of State of Tennessee.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Mr. Green. Appreciate your presentation. All right, then at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward.
I'm Rick Michelson. I'm property owner across the street. I appreciate the chance to address the board. I think, speaking of the library people, I'm not opposed to this project, as I think it will be positive for the city, and I'm not opposed to apple pie or motherhood either. Speaking to the library folks, it would have helped to have some neighborhood meetings ahead so I could have had some of my conditions addressed instead of just getting the zoning notice in the mail. So for future projects, you might consider that. My main concerns are with traffic. I realize you said that they said traffic probably wasn't going to be a problem. Anyone who's been to this particular intersection, it's a curved T intersection. It is not the intersection of Jupiter and Minerva is a series of 3 curved roads coming together with one yield sign there. I've already had, without additional traffic, a few cars end up on rainy or snowy days in my front yard spinning out at the intersection. So the addition of a driveway within just 100 so feet of this curved intersection with no traffic control, and there's also a blind hill coming over Jupiter right adjacent to the intersection on the north side, I think we may have some issues there, and I would appreciate that being addressed before the special use permit is granted, or if not, maybe a requirement for traffic addressing with that. The other thing is I would appreciate some requirements on both the special use permit and the variance for adequate buffering to maintain the character of our neighborhood, because it is a single-family home, quiet residential neighborhood, and the potential for people using anonymous internet access does raise some worries to me, and I hope that the city school board is going to take adequate measures to make sure everyone stays safe at the school as well. And with that, those are my only, I would say I can't object to the variance because I don't think there are any grounds to object for it, and that requires a definite objection. I have a hard time seeing or the special use permit rather, I have a hard time seeing with the size of the lot the requirement for the variance, and so I reserve the option to object to that, please. And that's all. I'll answer any questions at all.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Michaels?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else present wishing to speak for or against this application?
If I'm not out of line, I just might address some of Mr. Michelson's comments. The driveway, and I don't know if we have a map, but the access to Minerva is about 250 feet from the center of our drive to the center of Minerva Jupiter intersection. And he's right. The folks coming down Minerva, I believe I'm right, do not have to stop, keep going, and the people coming from Jupiter have to yield. Minerva's coming down the page and Jupiter coming across. And it is a little bit of a sharp curve. And we discussed this with the city traffic folks, and they were going to go back and look at that intersection, see if there's anything they need to do from a city standpoint there. But our drive is about 250 feet away. There's a lot of existing trees that we're leaving in place to buffer from the building and the parking to Minerva Drive. The only trees that will be taken out is where the access is coming in to Minerva, which is sort of down the lot line, not right in front of a house. So we did look at the houses across the street and the residential and try to do what we can to consider that as we went through this. So it's really, unless you have any other questions, I just wanted to bring that up. I have talked to the traffic engineering staff, and they have looked at this access drive. I might add I think he objected, maybe Mr. Michelson, to the parking setback. If you'll look at that site plan we had again, it's about half of one space would be within that variance. And then it's just the backup. We've oriented the parking so that no cars are facing Minerva, so there won't be any headlights shining in their yard or in their house, that kind of thing. We've oriented the parking away from that. And the reason for the variance is to allow some parking in front of the center. It's about a half of a space. It's over the 40 feet. And then they'll, when the cars back up, they'll have a little room to get out of there. So that's the reason for that 15-foot variance request on the front parking. It's still going to be about, I think it's about 40 feet from where they back up to the edge of pavement today. And that's really all I have, unless you have a question.
Quick question. I was looking at, I guess, the landscape plan there that we were provided. Does the rear of the building, I guess, facing Jupiter, does that have enough space there? It shows a tree line. I assume maybe that's an existing tree line and some of that has to be cleared.
Yes, sir.
Will there be room to aid in the rear of the building?
To put the building in there, yes, sir. And those trees are a mixture of oaks and poplars. There's even some pine trees in that area. This is, you know, so there's a pretty heavy tree row that's about 25 foot wide through that, you know, through that intersection. Those trees will remain.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they would be
Yeah, they're going to remain.
taken out during that. Okay. Thank you.
And I do want to point out that in the packets, and I can pull up on the screen if we need to, there are some pictures showing sort of the wooded area that around the corner, and it is pretty heavy in parts.
Yeah, can you go ahead and show those?
Sure thing. So this is an image from Jupiter Place. Those all appear to be pines for the most part. And then from Minerva, this is a little bit further south from where the curb cut would be, their new entryway. And this is the area where the access drive would be located. This is closer to the corner of Jupiter and Minerva. This is probably the most heavily wooded portion of the property.
So if we were to equate what the buffering is currently to as we do on the Planning Commission, a BC, or, you know, what would this equate to today?
That's a very good question, and I did not take that into account. This is really heavy landscaping, certainly in portions. This would be probably about as heavy landscaping as we require in the zoning ordinance for anything. There are some places where the trees are a little more scattered, which would be one of the lesser, probably equivalent to one of the lesser buffers. But either way, it would be very similar to some buffering standard, I think, that's within the zoning ordinance.
And I'm sorry, I missed it. So is the tree line then that this building backs up to, does it remain or does it go?
My understanding is that all of the
remain,
trees are going to remain except for what they need to take out for the driveway.
Okay.
And while staff did not put that as a condition, if the board wanted to make approval conditional on that, I think staff would be in agreement with that. And I'm assuming that the applicant probably wouldn't have much of a problem, but I don't want to speak for the applicant.
Yes, sir, Mr. Anthony. The intent is to leave the trees that's in that intersection. The ones that come out, I think there's a couple of pine trees where the driveway would come out, but the others would remain.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at page number 15 on the agenda material, it shows an overhead. It doesn't show the current driveway plan, and it doesn't show the building that's now under construction. But if you look at page 15, there's an overhead, and you can see that the tree line and everything else there that's at Jupiter and Minerva is pretty heavy, and it gets lighter as it gets down toward the intersection with Mercury Boulevard. and to take out a few trees to do the driveway. I'm not exactly sure where that would be, but you get some sense of it from looking at the plan, at the site plan, plus in there. So there's still going to be a good amount of foliage there year-round.
I guess since this is like zoning, butting up against like zoning, there's not necessarily a requirement for A, B, C, or D buffer in there.
Right, that's based on the zoning rather than use.
Okay.
The silt fence that's seen in the pictures, is that for construction of the gym that's underway right now?
I believe that that's right.
And then there's a parking lot that's going to serve that gym just to the east.
That is correct. Let me get the site plan pulled up here. Correct. Are you referencing this parking lot? That's right.
That's it. So that doesn't exist right now, but it will shortly.
Right, and that's when I was delivering the staff comments earlier. That lot was originally intended to be served by something of a loop right back here, if you can see where the arrow is going, and that's what has been removed from this plan and instead replaced with the proposed driveway off of Minerva.
Okay.
The drive that was shown in talking with the transportation director, it posed problems of its own, being so close to an existing loop right there, and so this is probably better placement at this point.
What will that parking lot serve? Is that a drop-off for kids? Trying to gauge how much traffic is going to. Now, this is a parking lot that was part of when the BZA heard the expansion of Hobgood then, right? Was it? I guess then it was that loop, wasn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Has the Planning Commission considered it in its current form now with the exit right there?
I believe that this will go to the Planning Commission after it is heard by this board. Does that sound right?
If I might address traffic for the school, if you're interested, the bus pickup is off of South Baird, I guess they pronounce it, in front of the school, as well as the car riders. You can see a little bit of the loop for the car riders, so there won't be any bus traffic or car rider pickup on Jupiter or Minerva. It's off of Baird Lane and in Mercury. Today there's 2 traffic control officers, one on Baird, one at the intersection of Baird and Mercury. So the school pickup and drop off and the bus traffic is not on Minerva or Jupiter. You know, the gym itself has really more parking than needed, but that gym is sort of multi-purpose. It could be used on Saturday mornings for recreation leagues as well as the school. The school today does not really have a gym. They've got a small room that they've had basketball goals hung in, but it is a gym for the school, and then the parking is mainly for when they have an event or they have recreational leagues on Saturdays, that kind of thing. But it won't be used for the car riders or bus pickup and drop off, either one.
Okay. When changes like that are made to a plat after BZA has heard it, and we've heard it conditioned on that, and granted it conditioned on that, with the understanding at least it has this loop driveway, and then changes are made afterward, does that not have to come back to the BZA?
If it's a significant change, it should come back to the BZA.
And what's significant to different people may differ.
Right.
So when does that have to come back to the BZA?
Well, BZA is primarily to approve the use and to approve the any variances, like allowing parking in the setback area. But generally, BZA does not specifically approve a site plan. Right. So assuming that today the use and the variance is approved, then this may have been seen by Planning Commission or planning staff, but I don't believe it's been to planning staff for site plan approval, which would be next.
Okay.
And I think that they would consider relocating the driveway because of a change in configuration. I wouldn't think that would generally be considered a major change that would truly impact the use and the variances to come back to BZA.
I want to add to Mr. Ives just to clarify how I answered that. If I understood, if there are conditions attached to specifically how the driveway is aligned that the BZA is put on, then it should come back to the BZA at that point.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay. All right. And this parking lot, then, that's the only parking lot. There are no other access, or ingress or egress from the parking lot other than what's right there on Minerva, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That appears to be the case.
Okay. All right. Any other folks here wishing to speak for or against this application? All right. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or motion. Recall, we've got a couple parts of this application. I should take it in two separate motions.
Mr. Chairman, if no further questions, I'll move to approve the first one, special use permit.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now the request for the variance prohibiting parking area in the front yard.
Before we make a motion, the only comment that I would make is I would hope that since we're not requiring a specific buffer, that because they are similar zones, is that we do look at areas where the landscaping could be supplemented, that we try to do that as part of our building plan. Granted, we don't, I think when we do make a motion here, we don't want any other trees taken down other than what is necessary with respects to the road cut. But if there are areas that could be supplemented, I think that as good neighbors, that's a direction that we would like to go, or that's my opinion.
So are you saying make that a condition?
Yeah, but it's going to be, it's very objective, because we're not dictating a specific buffer. We're not saying it should be a B, C, or D buffer, which, coming from the Planning Commission side, that's very detailed. It talks about what types of landscaping that you would use, the dimension and size of the buffer, the planting distances, and all this kind of stuff. I would just hope that as part of this project that since we're not dictating a buffer, that we would supplement the areas that are sparse, I guess is the best way to say it.
I think that recommendation will be carried to Planning Commission, and they'll look at that in the course of site plan approval.
I can definitely address that at that point in time. So,
The traffic issue that was raised, is that kind of, it's been looked at by the city traffic engineer, and it's okay, or is that going to undergo further study? I don't have I guess at this point, the way it's presented, they're okay with where the traffic's cut in. And
Chairman, I spoke to our traffic director on this issue, and in looking at this, and if there is a problem in the future, he had wanted us to make sure that we included in our comments on site review that the school would be responsible to provide some type of traffic control out there in the future. So we would basically look to the school system to, if need be, provide some type of traffic control, i.e. being some type of person out there to direct in and out during the school periods in which it would have a heavier traffic load.
okay.
So it has been considered, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Whitaker, just take it one step further. Is there any, and I'm sure you've had these discussions, it's not, according to Dr. Michelson, and even in comments, this has just got a yield side at this point. I mean, is there, any, and I'm talking about at Minerva and Jupiter, is there any merit to do anything different?
Currently, right now, and I had spoke to actually our traffic engineer, Mr. Ron Balachandra, yesterday, and there's no intentions to change the configuration currently. I'll be happy to continue discussions with Dana Richardson, our traffic director, on that matter. Definitely, we don't want to impact the flow of traffic through Minerva, but in this parking lot is primarily, and from my understanding, is a accessory for the gymnasium. It's not supposed to be used, and I'll defer to the engineer, for actually drop off and pick up for students. That's pretty much been taken care of at the previous addition to the school. This would be for the gymnasium use and for the use of the future library addition. But in the event we wanted to cover ourselves that, in fact, they change and started using this, that we could require them or have them to provide traffic control for this area. And that is our concern, to make sure, because the traffic control now is up on Mercury, and they could extend that down. And that's that would be further talk with the school at that time, in fact, if it becomes a necessary need. But at this time, I'll be happy to talk to our traffic director and see if it warrants any change of that configuration. It's kind of an awkward configuration. It's pretty well cast, and I'm not sure there's a whole lot we can do with it.
And this may be for Mr. Joe, but rather than hooking the driveway to come out, what was the thought process of hooking it there to the left to coincide with Minerva as opposed to carrying it out straight to Minerva? That is, give you a little longer distance between Jupiter and the driveway. You see what I'm talking about?
You're saying move our drive farther from the intersection?
Correct.
In essence, yeah.
It would come out, you want to come out with a driveway at a 90-degree for visibility. If you angled it into Minerva, it would really be, it's just harder to turn your head farther than 90 to look. So the driveways, the city requires them to come in at as close to 90 as you can. They'll allow you a 75-degree intersection, but it's really, if we go straight, we're coming out at a 60-degree angle or something that wouldn't meet the requirements.
So if it went straight, it would hook into Minerva at the curve in Minerva.
Right. And the sight distance is better where we have now. You're correct there. And we're 250 feet from the intersection. It looks close on that plan, but it's still pretty good ways. And the zoning orders typically would look at driveways at least 75 feet from the intersection. We're 250 feet away. And that is a tough intersection. I've been through there several times. You're coming down the hill, Minerva, and you're turning. It's a tough intersection. But I know the traffic. We've had discussions with the city traffic folks about that several times. And like I say, from a school standpoint, we're adding another drop-off lane off of our internal for the school, off of Baird Lane. You know, we're not intending on using Minerva for the school pickup and drop-off areas.
Is that little half circle on Jupiter, is it been in existence?
For a long, long time. And I think that used to be some car rider pickup and drop off of Jupiter. But it's really, it's just for staff parking really is all that's for. But it's been there a long time as far as I know.
Okay. Thanks, sir. All right. Well, do we have a motion on the request for the variance?
I'll make a motion that we approve the front yard setback variance, and then we will, I guess, address the landscaping at site plan approval with the Planning Commission.
A second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. All right. That was our final application. Is there any staff reports or other business?
I have two items, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we've provided you with a draft of the 2016 submittal and meeting calendar. We weren't going to have a discussion about that today, but if you would take the next month or so, look at that and determine whether you have any conflicts, just so we can try to figure out ahead of time if we, as far ahead as we can, if we're going to have quorums or not for those meetings. And we'll put that on the agenda for September. The other thing, Ms. Mosby and Ms. King have both been reappointed to this board. Congratulations. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations. All right.
It was time.
There's no business, then we're adjourned.